Hi everybody. I've had some questions lately about the events that can be used inside of intervals. I'm going to go over a few of them, and then I'd recommend you experiment with any of the others that you think might improve your class experience. Let's start by creating an interval. Click Add Interval. Let me make this one 5 minutes long. And let's say it's my warm-up. So I'll start at 50%. And I'll work my way up to 100% of FTP over that 5 minutes. Okay, so that's great. Let me click on Show Event, and then let me click on Add Event. And now it's asking at what time within this interval do you want this event to happen. So let's say this is real early on, and I'm going to say within 10 seconds. I'm going to add a text event. And I'll say, thanks for coming to class today. And that will show up in the profile section. Now let's go over to View. I have it set to Overview. Overview will show the entire workout, not just the next 2 minutes. And I'll say Save. Okay, so now I like to have my riders move around a little bit. So let's say after 2 minutes of riding, I want to start making some changes and being a little bit more specific to what they'll be doing for this warm-up. So let's say they've been riding for 2 minutes. I think it's time for them to stand up and start moving and to start increasing their intensity. So I'll click on Add Event. 2 minutes into this 5-minute interval, I want them to move their sprint shift lever to the right. And I want their RPM to be somewhere between 60 and 80. And in View, I'm going to select Zoom, and then I am going to change the rider that is right next to the target gauge in the profile section. I'm going to change that rider to standing. Great, and I'll click on Save. Great. Now, after 3 minutes, or 3 minutes into the interval, we have sprint shift, and I want the sprint shift lever to be moved to the center. RPM 60 to 80, still fine. Zooming in, meaning it's going to show the next 2 minutes, maybe 2.5 minutes of the profile, and the rider in that position, I want that rider to be seated. And I'm going to select Save. And then for the 4th minute, I want my riders to move their sprint shift lever to the left. I want them to increase their RPM to somewhere between 80 and 110. I still want the profile to be zoomed, and I want them seated. Great, Save. Okay, so now let's say they are warmed up. You might do a longer warm-up, and that's perfectly fine. I normally do as well, but for the sake of this video, let's say now I want to do an FTP test. I want to calculate their FTP to personalize their gauges. So I'm going to select Add Interval. Now the FTP tests can be anywhere from 1 minute and 1 second up to 20 minutes and 1 second. Obviously, a 1 minute interval is not going to be as accurate as a 20-minute interval. Okay, the longer the FTP test, the more accurate it's going to be. Just saying that, but if you don't have time and you just want to get people fairly accurate zones, very quickly, we can do that. So I'm going to select 1 minute, and I'm going to select 1 second. The percentage of a 1 minute effort for FTP is 70%. We'll take 70% of the average and assume that that's their FTP. And just to be clear, we know that this is not as accurate as a 20-minute effort. So don't hold that against us. We're just trying to give our instructors as many options as possible. So we're going to want our riders to ride at 130% of their FTP. Now, assuming they don't know it, they're just going to go hard. But people that do know their FTP, they would have to ride at 130% of their FTP for this 1 minute effort to be correct. Now I'm going to select Save. Now at this point, all it does is it knows that I set up a 1 minute interval. The event is going to tell it what we want it to do. I'm going to select Show Event, Add Event. 1 second into this event, we are going to do the FTP calc. I like to keep my FTP events very clean, so I don't add anything to the text line. I just have to coach that. From the view, you'll see there's Overview, which shows the entire workout, however long it is. It'll show everything that's going to happen. Zoom will show the next 2 to 3 minutes. When you zoom, you can also change the position of the rider that is next to the target gauge on the bottom inside of the profile. No cyclist would be a zoomed view of the profile with no cyclists at all. Summary. We are working on summary. That is not something I would use at this point. And what I'm doing now is calculating FTP. And I will select Save. Now, after this 1 minute effort, there will be an FTP results screen that pops up. If you add another event immediately after that, that event will override or take the place of the previous event. So you don't want to add an event immediately after an FTP calc if you want the results screen to be visible for your riders for whatever length of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an event in my next interval after 30 seconds. So that screen will show for 30 seconds and then disappear. Okay. Also, do not set up an event to take place during the FTP calc. So for example, this is a 1 minute FTP calc. If I set up an event 30 seconds in, maybe I was just trying to motivate and say, keep pushing, go hard, you're almost there, anything like that. That is going to override the FTP calc, and then it's not going to work for you. So keep your FTP interval clean with just that one FTP calc event. Okay, so now I would like to recover. I'm going to have a 2 minute recovery. "30 seconds in." I'm just going to say, "Nice job. Recover." Okay, and then I have to choose what view I would like. I'm going to choose no cyclist. Okay, that one pretty much shows all the events that I think most of our riders or instructors would be using. There are other ones in there. There's other riding positions. Go ahead and play with those. See if you like them, see if you want to add them. I'm going to save this, and then we're going to run this. And this is going to run for 8 minutes. I'm going to run it and explain all of the events as they're happening so you can see them. All All right, so let's see how those new events work. Let's go and select Add Profile and Route. We'll go into My Folder. Here's the events demo that I just created. I'm going to select Start, and then I'm going to Show External Screen to show you what's happening. So my first one was just the text event that said thanks for showing up for class today. That came and left. Those text events only appear for 5 seconds. If you want them to appear longer, you'll need to add multiple. So for example, if you wanted thank you for coming to class today to show for 15 seconds, you would start it 5, 10, 15 seconds into the interval, wherever you wanted it, and then you would need to add a second one 5 seconds after the first one, and then a third one 5 seconds after that, and then those words would stay on the bottom of the screen for an extended period of time. But by default, they last 5 seconds. Okay, you'll see that the profile is in Overview view right now, and there is not a rider riding next to the target gauge. I believe we had a second event appear at 2 minutes into the interval, so in 35 seconds, we should see the next event. So I had it switch to profile zoom. You'll see the rider is standing, and the words said sprint shift lever right, RPM 60 to 80. Now this will continue for the rest of this minute, and then with 2 minutes left, it will change again. You'll see the rider change to a seated position, and it says sprint shift center, RPM 60 to 80. Now I'm holding the same position, but asking for a faster RPM. Now this 1 minute and 1 second effort is my FTP effort. I'm going to put it in demo mode now, just so there are some results that show there. Now this is my FTP calc interval. There won't be anything written because I like to keep it nice and clean, but it has just started now. There's 5 seconds left. And now you'll see the FTP results screen. It has bike number or username if someone had booked a bike on the left. Average wattage, in this case for the 1 minute in the center. And then estimated functional threshold power on the right. Now when I created this, after 30 seconds of this recovery interval, I added an event. That will automatically clear this like that. And then it says, nice job, everyone. If you don't add an event, the FTP results screen will stay up on the screen until you press one of the buttons on the control panel. I recommend you would tap gauges only or gauges and video. And when you tap on the instructor panel on that screen, then the results screen will disappear. If you want it to disappear automatically, set up an event at whatever time into the next interval you want that screen to show. There are some facilities that don't want that screen to show at all, so they set up an event 1 second into the next interval, and then it just flashes and disappears. All right, there's lots of events in there. There's lots of other things you can play with and experiment with. Most of them have to do with the view of the rider. There's a runner, looks like the rider finishes an event and he has his hands up like he's a winner at the end. There's sprint, there's all of those options. You could add those as well. But play around with it. Let me know if you have any other questions. I'll do my best to answer them.